Hello, Malt Mates. Welcome to the Bothy. Welcome to Ralphie Review 1103. Extra content, extra opinion, extra perspective, sharing of extra experience. And I'm going to tell you and give my personal take on organic whiskies. We are seeing more organic whiskies in 2020s. They have been around for a while, but historically they've been an absolute novelty. And in particular, you've had a few brands that have claimed to be organic, but they're not Soil Association certified, which means a registered third-party charity with expertise and the resources are coming into the business, and they are confirming and affirming that the organic status is earned, has been deserved, and is legitimate. So I commend Benromach for putting up with all the trouble and all the hassle of actually creating a legitimate certified organic whisky. Now, what does that mean? Now, it basically means that you have a certain parameters where you cannot use taken for granted modern, contemporary industrial processes which are perceived to render the product inorganic. Organic, certainly under the auspices of the Soil Association, has very rigorous and specific interpretation. And as such, to have that certification from the Soil Association is a very legitimate endorsement. We're looking basically at simply sourced grains which have been farmed in a specific way with the minimal use of fertilizers, pesticides, and the reduced use of the more toxic herbicides like I was going to say Paxarep. That's something else completely different. I've forgotten what it is. It's basically Roundup. Okay. There are very, very powerful chemicals used in today's corporate businesses on wheat, corn, sugar, palm. All the staple crops have substantial amounts of chemically derived enablers incorporated into their production to simply reduce wastage and spoiling during harvest, to accelerate the speed of the harvest, to artificially ripen the whatever's being produced, whether it be corn, wheat, sugar, barley. And when you have something that's organic, it is perceived generally to be a more healthy option. In terms of whisky, there is a small but growing demand for organic versions. Now, I know that Nick Nean, the whisky producer, are very much into this side of things and do have an organic version of their whisky. Organic whiskies used to be thin in the ground. We're seeing more of them. I think they're interesting and I think they're well worth looking into, depending on the prices, for a very simple reason. It's the way in which the grain is produced by the farmers is not so intensive, and therefore they've got to use varieties of barley which are going to be suitable for that organic status, which tend to be a little bit more old-fashioned, a little bit more slower growing but resistant to pests, mildew and other problems that farmers face. And as a result, you tend to get more flavour. So I would firmly put organic, single malt organic blended whisky in the same category, side by side with local barley status. Local barley status may not be certified organic, but it is virtually organic by default because it is locally sourced, and small farmers getting small yields are not going to all the bother of dumping glyphosate, which is, I've now remembered what I'd forgotten earlier, glyphosate, known locally to gardeners as Roundup, which has very well recorded links to cancer, right? When it's overused, like anything, too much of anything is going to be bad for you. However, this whole area around organic is very polarised. What we're looking for is, when we see a bottle, check it's certified, not just claiming disingenuously to be organic. There needs to be validity to it. And I recommend you get a bottle just for the experience. As I've mentioned, it has the same sort of style of delivery as a local barley as you would find from both Springbank and Bruichladdich, who are the pioneers of local barley sourcing. Kilchoman do it. Lochlee, of course, a new distillery, are very proud to present that the farm in which the distillery is based is producing its own barley. This is becoming important. It separates distilleries, not just in terms of marketing passion, but of something tangible and meaningful. And this has become more important as the big scramble for attention by customers of so many new distilleries gathers pace. Another thing about a certified organic whisky is it cannot be matured in ex-sherry casks or ex-bourbon casks if the bourbon, and only if the bourbon has not been certified as organic, or the sherry has not been certified as organic. Now, I have never seen organic sherry, but I do know there's been some experiments with organic bourbon. And it could well be that you get an ex-bourbon cask which is certified organic because it's got the paperwork provenance. Now, you could use that for maturing your whisky, so long as your certifier, in this instance the UK Soil Association, actually validate it and accept the provenance of the cask falls within their standards. Benromach have kept things simple here. They have sourced virgin oak casks. Now, this means that they're using casks for their organic whisky to mature the organic whisky, full length of maturation, which are virgin oak. In other words, they have been prepared for maturing this whisky, probably more deep toasted for longer periods to reduce the sappiness and the greenness of the fresh wood, and also given a light char just to help to soften the whisky as it settles down to mature. And that, of course, will add a little bit to the colour. But with virgin oak, they have to source carefully because some virgin oak can be really quite raw, quite green, and it can actually ruin the balance of an organic whisky. Interestingly, the question arises, can you get an organic heavily peated whisky, or peated in any way kind of whisky? And at that point, if it's going to be Soil Association certified, they would actually have to take samples from the peat bog from where you are sourcing the peat, and then they decide, having examined the samples for residues, whether they decide that the peat bog itself is organic. Now, you can see this is starting to get expensive here. For those, by the way, who are kosher, who are forbidden for religious reasons to be consuming products of a certain variety, an organic certified whisky is a very good option to consider because it tends to be compliant with these laws. However, it does need an authoritative decision before it can be formally accepted as such. That's just the way things lie in that area. My conclusion here is that when you see something labelled as organic, you need to take a double check. Because with careful and fly labelling, you could basically take organic grain and mature it in any cask you want and say that the product is this is an organic grain matured single malt whisky. It doesn't necessarily mean that the whole experience is certified organic. So please be aware of that when you're making your decisions and doing your explorations. But I think that the whisky industry is looking at what's happening in the wine scene as things get far more competitive in the wine industry globally. We're seeing more organic wines appear because there is a small but growing demand for that, and it certainly suits the palate of vegetarians and vegans who feel that if something is organic, it is definitely much closer to their philosophical view on what they should and should not consume. I'm not going to get drawn too far into it because you get racked with socio-personal politics at this point, and I just don't take much to do with it because life's too short as far as I'm concerned. Is organic whisky automatically better? No. No. You need to look at general reviews. However, here's one for you if you're visiting distilleries. Just ask them what they think of organic whisky and would they ever do one. And for those, and when you're visiting Benromach, for example, this is an ideal distillery to ask them how they got on with the Soil Association. Now, inevitably, they're professional people. They're going to be tactful. They're going to be diplomatic. But I tell you what, any distillery anywhere in the world, if you want something that's actually certified by an official, recognised third-party organic status organisation, you're going to have to put yourself through the ringer. And it's going to cost. And you've got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is there any point in producing an organic whisky, or should you just stick to local barley, local sourced, and basically have a statement from the farmer that they have not used glyphosate? And leave it at that. Hope you've enjoyed this. I'm Ralphie in the Whisky Bothy, sharing stuff with you, and I am concluded with this video. Just time for a little glass of whisky, which is taking us a while, but as you can see, it's now taking on some Scotch mist, and that's good to see. Very tasty. As time goes on, it's getting a little bit more citrus, tangy, and lime oil. See you soon.